up, you guys? Emma here. I wanted to jump on and do an update episode. I've been trying to do these a little bit more and answer some of your guys' questions, communicate with you guys, and of course, share anything that's been going on or anything upcoming. You'll have to excuse me. I did an interview a little bit earlier, and I'm a little bit, my brain's a little bit fried today, so I'm going to do my best to get through this. First of all, I hope that all of you are healthy, happy, and staying safe out there. And I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all your support for this podcast, for this platform, for the survivors that are so courageous and brave to come on and share their stories, and for all the outpouring of love that you guys continually give me, this podcast, and every single guest. It's just incredible, and it seems to be growing every single day and every single month and every year that I've done this. I've just noticed so many more people come on and believe these stories and want to contribute positively, and I get less and less negative feedback, less and less discreditation and invalidation of these testimonies. And I just really appreciate you guys coming together and creating this beautiful, safe, incredible, protective, and just loving community around these incredible warriors who are speaking out. So with that being said, I had a couple people that are new ask me how I got into this, and I thought I would take an opportunity to reintroduce myself and or share just a little bit about my journey for those of you who might be new here, or for those of you who may not have seen other times that I've spoken about my journey into podcasting. So I'm going to try to keep this kind of short. I know you guys aren't here for me. I do appreciate all the love that you give me, but I know that you guys are here to listen to the survivors, so I don't want to take up so much time and make this a really long episode, but I did want to come on and share a little bit about my own journey and hopefully answer any questions that you guys have. So first of all, my name is Emma Catherine, as some of you know, and I've been podcasting since 2020. How my journey got started is sort of a long story, but it's also not at the same time. So when I was 22, I had moved out to Las Vegas and I was super poor, didn't have a lot of money to do personal development and things that could help educate me. And I just discovered podcasts and would listen to them religiously while I was driving to all the different jobs that I had, which is a whole nother story in itself, my journey out in Vegas. But while I was driving, I would listen to different podcasts and realized how valuable they were. They were free, they're easy to stream wherever you're at, and they are just a really great way to learn about things whenever you have some spare time to turn something on in the background, which I had a lot of that. I was in my car a lot. So I really got a lot out of podcasts and told myself that one day my dream would be to create one so I could help other people in the same way that they help me, and that I could contribute something for free into the world that would hopefully help other people on the other side, just as I had been helped. But I didn't know a direction that I wanted to go. I am not a survivor, and I didn't grow up knowing about this stuff. I grew up sort of sheltered from a lot of this. I was one of those people that thought that these crimes were very far from me. I thought that they only happened in third world countries. I thought that they only happened sort of at the border, like how we hear all the time on the news. And I felt very disconnected from it. Um, I didn't know about satanic ritual abuse. I had no idea about MK Ultra growing up. Even human trafficking wasn't something that I really was introduced to until I got older. And actually, whenever I lived out in Vegas, I would hear that term here and there, because as you guys might know, that's a big hub for trafficking. And I did not know that almost my entire time living out there. So flash forward to 2020, I was one of those people who I was still employed, but my job was in sales. Instead of driving around all the time, I was now at home and doing my job from Zoom, like what we're doing right now. And I had some extra time because I wasn't in my car all the time. And so I started paying attention more to politics, which I never really had done. Started paying attention to the news more and got very curious about what's going on in the world. Um, to give a little bit of background information, I've always been sort of what you might call a conspiracy theorist. I hate that word, but it's the best terminology I know how to use. I've always really been open to learning about things that are unconventional. And I could tell you so many stories of different ways that I sort of broke boundaries in my professional career, with thinking outside the box in different ways in different industries that I was in, because certain things never aligned with me. And I did research to figure out why. And so many, I've always been one of those people, why, how, and never really took things like at face value. I had to sort of like dive into it myself and learn about it. And came to some really radical and incredible conclusions as a result of being my own sort of investigative researcher on the topics in my life that I've been very passionate about, health and wellness and fitness, especially being a big part of my background. I ended up evolving very unconventionally in my industries, and did some really neat things and discovered some really neat things. So, anyways, when I started listening to the news in 2020, I started seeing human trafficking coming up more, and it was, again, something that felt kind of far from me. So I didn't necessarily understand it in the context that I do now. I understood now that it was happening in my country. I started researching it a little bit more. Come here, Keefe. And it suddenly became a little bit closer to me because I started hearing about stories that were happening in Vegas. And I'm thinking, gosh, that's crazy that this isn't as far from me as I thought it was. Why didn't I learn about this growing up? You know, we just hear about stranger danger. You don't hear about, the ways that we know of now, that parents traffic their children, and that these people end up being in closely knit communities and groups and around the children, that typically do these. It's not the strangers typically that are doing this. And so nothing really hurts my heart more than children and animals being abused. I am an avid animal lover. I have a very soft spot in my heart, especially for dogs. I love my dog with all my heart. He's my little sweetheart. And my experiences with babies, I have had a lot of, from in my own family to helping raise a child in my adult life. So I have just always had a really soft spot for these very vulnerable beings in our world. And whenever I had heard about these crimes happening, it just became very evident to me that this was something I needed to pay attention to, and I didn't know why. I was very concerned that this was the first time that I had ever learned about it. So, anyways, long story short, I went down these different deep dives, and eventually, like you have on the other side of the screen, ended up stumbling on satanic ritual abuse, MK Ultra, mind control, organized abuse, familial trafficking, and my whole world imploded. Like everything imploded. Everything that I knew changed. The way that I look at the world was just so different. I didn't know how I was going to sort of pretend, go to work and just forget about that when things changed and I was back out in the field. But I did know that this was something that I needed to help with. I needed to help share this information now that I knew it. I felt a moral responsibility that I had to do something about this, but I didn't know how. Like I said, I worked full time. I had every intention of going back to work once the whole pandemic thing, ended, and I was to then go back out in the field on my sales calls. So giving up my job wasn't an option. I wasn't going to go work at a nonprofit because I was starting to read bad things about those from a couple of the survivor testimonies that I came across. So I had just put it out. I asked God, I asked the universe, whatever your belief is, what can I do to help? Please guide me in a direction because I am so heavy right now and I need to do something, but I do not know what. And so as things started converging for me, I started to have these ideas where my past love of podcasting started to integrate with this idea of wanting to help. One of the things I was doing was looking for survivor testimonies. I couldn't find them anywhere, and I didn't know why. Why are the only people speaking about these crimes nonprofit owners, politicians, the mainstream media? Where were the survivors? I had to dig so far on the depths of the internet to find testimonies. Kathy O'Brien's testimony, one of them that I've aired on my movie nights on Tuesday nights, is actually one that I stumbled on first, and that blew my world open even more. Hearing it directly from a survivor, it hit different in my soul and in my heart than seeing an article in a newspaper or hearing about this on the news. It just became very personal and felt so much closer. So Kathy's testimony was one of the first ones that I found, and it just ripped my heart apart. And I knew I needed to listen to more testimonies to understand this, because it was so much for my mind to grasp that I couldn't simply understand it from seeing an article and just hearing a term. I really knew that in order for me to have a grasp on this and to fully understand it, I had to listen to the people that experienced it, which makes sense. In my life, some of the podcasts that I listened to were about business, for example, and I didn't go listen to about, or I should say, I didn't go learn about business from some bum sitting on his mom's couch in the basement. I went and learned from people who had successful businesses that were teaching others how to duplicate what they did. And so I never understood, like, why are we learning about this stuff from people who didn't go through it? We need to hear from survivors. In my innocent, sort of naive mind, I thought for sure there had to be people out there interviewing survivors. And I was very disappointed and very, very hurt in my soul and in my heart that I couldn't find podcasts that were interviewing survivors. That was something I was like, well, instead of listening to these other podcasts, I'm going to go listen to survivor testimonies. And like, I couldn't find them. And so, again, these ideas over the course of a few months just started to converge. And all of a sudden, it just hit me like, why don't you do a podcast, Emma? Invite survivors on. You're solving your problem and your frustration. You're living out a dream that you've had for so many years and didn't know what to do with it, aka the podcast. And you now have this idea that you don't see anybody else has done. So it's sort of like you could pioneer something and help get other people on board to support what you care about. And so it was sort of done there. And the interesting thing was, before I had this idea, months before I really started digging into this research, I actually had gotten with a friend that I knew that was a graphic designer. And I said, hey, I really want to start a podcast this year now that like this COVID stuff has happened. Can you help me create a logo and just make it really basic? I don't know what I want to do my podcast on, but I'm going to call it the imagination. And the reason why I did that was because in my mind, I am constantly using my imagination to try to figure out how to make things better, to try to figure out how I can be a better person, how I can make the world better every single day. I'm trying to figure out how to solve problems all the time that don't have solutions yet. And in order to do that, I have to use my imagination. And so I had a whole list of names that I was going to name my podcast, or that I wanted to, potential names. I went and looked all of them up online, and the only one that didn't have a million other podcasts named after it was the imagination. And so that was settled. And I thought, we need to use our imagination to imagine a better world. We need to imagine a world without human suffering, without um, without human trafficking, even after I discovered that. But to me, it was like, how can we use our imagination to imagine business in a different way, to imagine health and healing in a different way, which was kind of what I thought I would start a podcast on, because that was what my career was. But it ended up evolving into imagine a world without human trafficking, imagine a world without child abuse, imagine a world where everybody's healed. And so to me, our imaginations are the key to creating a world that doesn't exist yet, to creating what we wish existed, even to becoming the person that we wish that we had when we were growing up. You know, if you don't have an example of that, you have to use your imagination to say, well, how can I do things different than what was done to me? Or how can I do this job different than what's been traditionally done? How can I change the world in a way that somebody else isn't doing? And so my imagination personally has always been a big part of my life and how I navigate the world and how I solve problems, you know, and how I innovate in my career, in my personal life, and especially with this cause that I knew needed the most attention and needed the most imagination possible, because there's been so many generations before me that didn't take care of this problem that I am now passionate about helping solve. And many of you on the other side of the screen are. And so that was the inspiration behind my podcast name. And it fit perfectly once I finally had the dots connected. I'm like, oh my gosh, imagine a world without child trafficking. Imagine a world where everybody's healed. You know, all these different ways that we can imagine and envision together, right down to having to imagine what something like organized abuse is if it's something that you didn't go through. If you haven't gone through that like me, this is something that requires your full imagination to comprehend because it's so incomprehensible that there's no other way to do it. You can't step into somebody's shoes who went through that and fully understand, like maybe you can in other circumstances in life. This is something that completely devours your emotion, your imagination. You have to use your imagination in order to envision what something like satanic ritual abuse is because it's just too much for our minds to even begin to logically comprehend naturally. So it just really fit. Um, so that was kind of how I developed my podcast. And I thought, I'm going to put it out there on the internet. I'm going to ask if you're a survivor and have a story, I have a platform for you. I'm going to create a safe environment for you to share your story. The key being safe, non-judgmental, all walks of life, no matter what. The focus is on you and your story, and there's no strings attached. It's not about you having specific beliefs that have to align with mine. My podcast is about the guest fully, every little thing, right down to the intros that I do, down to the way that I podcast. I try to be more of a submissive host instead of an aggressive interrogator. I try to create a dialogue that's like two friends talking versus like me being some, really scripted interviewer. I like the conversations to feel very organic, and they are very organic. I don't script any of the actual conversations. The only thing that I write out and take time to do are my introductions, which are not for the listener. They are in the sense of instead of putting a trigger warning on every episode, I do an introduction to gently allow the audience to decide if they can handle the topic and the guest that's going to be talking, if they're emotionally able to listen to the episode. But it's also a way to honor my guests. These survivors have never been honored in their entire life. Um, some of them may have, if they've been speaking out for a while, they may have been given compliments and praise. But you have to think the depths of depravity that my guests are speaking about and coming forward to talk about, and what has been told and done to them. My intros are a way to give them a gift of praising them, of honoring them, of celebrating them, and of giving them the compliments, the appreciation that they never had growing up. And so for people who say your intros are too long, I don't care. They're not for you. You can skip by them if you want. If you watch the most of my guests' reactions after they hear the intros that I do, they're very emotional and touched about it. And that is why I do them, for that, for them to feel love and appreciation first thing as soon as we come on, as they're getting ready to share the hardest, deepest, most traumatizing things that they've ever went through. My podcast, unlike others, doesn't talk about the best things in somebody's life, their accomplishments. Of course, we do at the end. I try to celebrate every survivor by talking about the things that we now get to celebrate as they're coming forward as a survivor now instead of a victim. But as we share a testimony of somebody's past, they're sharing the hardest, most traumatizing, depths of depravity things that could exist in the world, and from their own personal experience. And so to be able to start the show off on a really high note where they feel appreciation and good emotion first, it helps transition the conversation in a comfortable way to things that are really difficult, and helps kind of take the edge off, if that makes sense. And I hope that does make sense to some of you, especially those of you that do make those comments on my videos, judging the introduction and not seeing the big picture. So that is how my podcast got started, and I love doing this podcast. I didn't think I'd be able to sustain doing a podcast on this one topic for this long. I am deeply both honored and also troubled that I've been doing this for 5 years and that there's absolutely no shortage of people that I can bring on. I cannot believe how prevalent these crimes are. I cannot believe that I didn't know about these crimes existing until just a few years ago when I started my podcast. and I hope that this can serve as a gift that I can give all of you, just like how I received from others in podcasts that I listen to. I hope that you guys find the same value, the same healing that I do in listening to these. I hope you understand why sharing testimonies is so important and why listening to survivors is so important. I hope you guys understand the long form interviews, that you can't fit these stories into little 10, 20, 30-minute segments, that even 4 hours of talking about some of these stories sometimes still isn't enough to really explain what happens and how all of this connects in our world and the different networks that are built through these crimes and the people involved and the different layers of it and where it exists and how it exists, when it happens, how it happens, who's doing it. I feel like with a lot of my guests, I could talk to them for 24 hours and still just be scratching the surface of their story and the brevity of this. So there's a lot of strategy that goes behind what I do, a lot of thought that goes behind what I do. My podcast is not a religious or political podcast, it is not pertaining to one belief system. This is a safe space for survivors to come on, not be judged for where they are, where they were, or where they're going, where their belief systems are, what political line or spiritual belief they have. It is a way to honor them in full in a way that has never been given to them before, and to appreciate them for exactly where they are, exactly where they were, and exactly where they're going with nothing but love. Um, None of my guests, if I were to invite guests on that only believed what I did, I wouldn't have a single guest, because every single guest is so unique and we have something to learn from everybody. Um, Child abuse is not religious, it's not political. It is not aligned with one specific demographic. This is a worldwide pandemic. This is a worldwide problem. This is the worst crimes against humanity in human history that we're talking about. And it exceeds political parties, religions, it exceeds any belief system. It's everywhere. Right down to race, country, you name it. Like there's no one thing that this fits into. And so trying to do that does a great disservice to the problem at large. And we have so much to learn from every single testimony and every guest that has the courage to come up and share. So I would love if you guys have more questions, if you guys want to drop them below. Again, I didn't want to make this a really long episode because I know you guys are here for the guests, but I don't talk about myself deliberately on the podcast a lot because I really want the focus intentionally to be on the guests. They are what matters, who matters. And I know that, again, you guys are here to listen and to see them, and I'm so grateful for that. So grateful for that. That's what I want you guys here for. But I do appreciate the love that you guys give me and wanted to answer questions from you guys. And that was one that I've gotten a few times. So I wanted to come on and just address it and reintroduce myself and share where I came from in this and sort of the backstory of my podcast, and where my passion came from with this. So I can't thank you guys enough again. It makes me emotional. All the support you guys have given me these last 5 years, even as my podcast has been terminated multiple times off YouTube and other platforms. You guys always find me and uplift me and keep me going. I wouldn't have a podcast without you guys. Survivors, they could come on and talk all they want, but without people listening and caring and sharing, commenting, um, this podcast couldn't exist. So this podcast exists because of you, and I thank you for that gift of helping bring something I was passionate about to life. It means so much to me. So I apologize for getting emotional. Just want you guys to know that you're appreciated on the other side of the screen by me and every single guest. There's a reason why survivors choose this platform. It really is a safe space for them to come and share these really hard things. There's a reason why a lot of people have chosen this platform and not some really big platform that invited them. And it's because of you. It's because you guys have helped bring what was in my imagination to life. And you guys have helped imagine and bring to life this beautiful community that we have here. So thank you guys. If you guys could connect with me on Rumble, if you're on YouTube, and vice versa. If you're on YouTube, connect with me on, or sorry, if you're on Rumble, connect with me on YouTube. Follow my Substack. I actually do, after every single episode, I do a recap. So you guys can read the bullet points of every single episode that we do here. It's a great way to go back and just keep notes on the key points that we talked about. So if you guys subscribe, it's for free. It's in the show notes. Follow me there to get those updates. I also do written survivor testimonies and my own personal journaling on there, from my own heart. That's kind of my passion project, is my Substack whenever I get time. I'm also on Spotify, iTunes. So follow me wherever you guys can. Follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm on X. I am on pretty much every platform. So come support and hang out. Come keep sharing these episodes and following the survivors and donating to them and uplifting them. Your support means the absolute world to me. So with that being said, you guys, thank you guys for being here and for sticking through me through this episode. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.